Hello, my friends. Welcome to Unbecoming with Elena Joy. Today, we're starting off with a personal story. Once upon a time, over 20 years ago, I was newly married, devoutly Mormon, working at Brigham Young University, and as one does, trying to start a family. And I had a miscarriage. It was very, very early on before my first doctor's appointment, even. I think I'd only known I was pregnant for about a week. But it was my first time I'd gotten a positive sign on that pregnancy test, and I was devastated. My internal world fell apart. No one was talking about miscarriages then, and it seemed like I didn't know anyone who had gone through one. I was convinced that my body had failed to do the one thing that I was supposed to be able to do, start a family. So I worked at BYU, and my boss at the time had 11 children. It was BYU. So the day I went back to work, I couldn't engage, like, at all. I couldn't even turn on my computer. I didn't know what to do. My boss and we'd never had, like, a closed door conversation, but that day I asked for one, and he made time. In that time, he told me that his wife had gone through several miscarriages, and then he told me, matter-of-factly, that the statistics were in my favor. I was probably going to be just fine, and he was right. But what he was telling me was data. He was a data science professor, but he intuitively knew that matter-of-fact data was exactly what I needed in that moment. He was able to tune in to his intuition, and I was able to hear what I needed to hear to calm my nervous system down so that I could turn on my computer and engage in life again. Now, he wasn't trying to do what a good leader should. He wasn't trying to foster connection. In fact, if you asked him, he would probably tell you he had no idea how to connect with a very young woman who was falling apart in his office. But he brought his full presence into that room. He listened to his gut, and he helped me get back on track, exactly the way a good leader should. And now it's 20 plus years later, and leaders tell me that connection at work is overwhelming at best and oftentimes anxiety producing. So, especially those leaders like my engineers, my CPAs, those leaders who feel like innately inept at these connection at work, the connecting at work. For them, it feels like an even bigger struggle because it's a weakness for them, not a strength, or they perceive it to be. And so, especially for them, I created the ARC framework. This is a 3-step, step-by-step framework of really quantifying that path to connection. It demystifies it. It makes it accessible and something that anyone can engage in, anyone can learn, because it is a skill. It's not like an innate talent. It's not magic. It's not personality. It's not about being an extrovert. It's simply about knowing how to bring your full self into the room, knowing that person well enough that you can connect with them even when the stress is really high, even when all the odds are stacked against it. Now, for those of us that need the business case before we're really motivated to learn new skills, know this: disconnection is the biggest predictor of burnout at work. Show me your most disconnected, isolated team member, and I will show you your biggest burnout risk. And here's the cherry on top: managers, those with direct reports, create a 70% variance in employee engagement. It's not compensation, it's not schedule flexibility, it's managers and their connection with their direct reports. Now, that's a lot to carry, but we can use that as motivation and reason enough to engage in this kind of learning. And here's what doesn't get said enough in leadership development conversations: connection at work is not optional because it's biological. It is baked into our DNA to seek out connection and belonging. It's in our wiring because way back in the day, if we weren't with our people, the hyena was going to bite us in the butt. And so we are wired to seek out connection and belonging as a survival mechanism, even at work. If we don't feel connected at work, it's really hard to engage. It's really hard to maintain focus. It's really hard to produce quality work. But when we do feel genuinely connected at work, our nervous system regulates. We're able to focus, we're able to engage, we're able to prevent our burnout and the burnout of people around us. And biggest of all, we produce better work with a regulated nervous system. That's not hard to understand, but connecting it to a leadership skill of creating connection at work is the imperative part. Because when I teach this as a leadership skill, it is not a soft skill. It is teaching leaders how to work with their people's nervous systems instead of against it, starting with their own. And one last point before we move into the 3-step framework. You are probably thinking, I do not have time for this. And boy, sister, do I hear you. Whether it's not having the time or simply not having the capacity, the idea of putting one more thing on my calendar makes me want to tear my hair out. And I love my hair. The beauty of this framework is that it does not ask you to add more things to your calendar. It asks you to simply use the time you already have a little differently. Specifically, we're going to cut out the waste of time that is small talk. All right, let's get into the first step. ARC is an acronym. The A stands for Activate the Connection. And an easy way to start doing that is by finding their spark. Every human has at least one topic that makes their eyes light up and pretty much guarantees that the conversation is going to be a positive experience. For some people, it's their kid. For others, it's their dog or their hobbies or the cosplay convention that they've been getting ready to go to for 6 months or their side hustle drag persona. Some people have 3 sparks going at all times, and other people have had the same spark for 20 years. Your job is to find it and remember it. I have a sister who is a single mom of an only child, my nephew Alex. Alex is my sister's whole heart. And when her manager joined the team a few years ago, he pretty quickly realized it. And now in the break room, instead of asking, how are things going? Instead, he says, how's Alex doing? That's it. That is the whole move. Because my sister's eyes would light up, and instead of this being kind of an awkward experience, it was almost always a really positive experience. The relationship deepened, and not because of a trust building exercise or a team offsite, as much as I love to do those, but because one person noticed and remembered what mattered deeply to her. And if you remember anything from the Activate section, remember this. Noticing and remembering their spark, finding their spark is what makes the difference between the waste of time that is small talk and genuine connection. So, do you know your team members' sparks? Do they know yours? And spoiler, this is often where I have to pause my training because many managers in corporate America do not know their own spark. If that's you, permission to pause this and go find it. The R is for reinforce. Once you've activated the connection, it's time to reinforce it. And to do this, I teach a skill called powerful presence. Now, we practice this not in adding more things to the calendar, but in using the time that we already have a little bit differently. Let's go back to my sister's boss, who found her spark. Yeah, he stopped at the A, activate, and it really backfired. See, every month there's a team meeting. My sister and her colleagues walk into his office for this monthly team meeting that is already on the calendar. But he's already working, and he keeps working until everyone is there and seated. And then he pulls up the template, he asks the questions, he inputs the answers, and they move on. There's no real contact, there's no real connection. Now, this hour cost him something more than he probably was even aware of. His team members' nervous systems registered month after month that they didn't matter enough to warrant his full attention. And just as importantly, his own nervous system did not get the reset that genuine human connection in the room could have offered him. Let's be clear, the time was never the problem. But what happened inside that time was everything. To address this, I teach a skill called powerful presence. And so this is a intentional ability to bring in our thoughts and our ideas and our concerns and our anxieties from the future, bring them in, as well as about the past, all those regrets and our thoughts about what's been going on in the past, bring them in. And with laser focus, we are present in that moment, present in our communication, present in our connection to our intuition, like my old boss, and present to that human or humans who are sitting right in front of you. Powerful presence is what allows us to create that genuine human connection in the time that we already have. And it is a skill. It's not a magic trick. It's not innate in some people and not there in others. It can be learned, it can be practiced, and it can leverage the time that you already have on the calendar. And lastly, this is really important for those of us who are neurodivergent, like me. If you have neurodivergent team members, listen up. You probably already know that small talk is not our strength. Reading between the lines, the hidden social agendas, that doesn't work for us. In fact, it can often dysregulate us. It's clear, direct communication and connection that works for us. Clear signal, no noise. And as our workforce increasingly identifies as neurodivergent, the leaders who are able to offer that kind of clarity are going to stand out. We've made it to the last step. C stands for Codify. When you have people in your life that matter to you, it's important to create a system that tracks what matters to them. Why? Because when things get stressful, and they always eventually get stressful, humans, we default to efficiency rather than empathy. So we need to create a system that allows us to continue to connect even when things are really hard, because actually that's the time when we need those connections the most. So what kind of system? It literally doesn't matter. It's whatever is sustainable and works for you. For some clients, they use a CRM style tracker. That works well for them. For others, they will add a column to their one-on-one template. For me and for a lot of people, we just use the Notes app on our phone. I keep it limited to just 10 people because that's what's sustainable for me. And that's friends and professional peers both. Just their name at the top with some bullet points underneath. I check it before we get together and I add to it after we say goodbye. It's simple, it's sustainable. It's there even when times are really high stakes or really stressful. And that allows me to maintain those deeper, more authentic connections because these people matter to me. So instead of relying on willpower, which y'all leaders who last know that relying on willpower is a slippery slope to burnout, instead of relying on willpower, I rely on my system that I've been able to build and maintain because it's simple and it's sustainable. And then there's Tammy. Tammy, some people would call her my imaginary friend. I prefer to call her my internal admin assistant. I've decided she makes $18 an hour, and when I need her, she takes care of all those connection tasks that I just can't handle when I'm being overwhelmed by social anxiety that day. So when it's time to return that email, return that text, follow up on that coffee meeting, if I can't handle it, I assign it over to Tammy. It just makes it not as personal and it gets done. The connection is maintained. This is the first time I'm sharing about Tammy publicly, and only because last week I was teaching the ARC framework to a group of leaders from a nationwide tech company. Now, it wasn't planned. Tammy wasn't in the script, wasn't rehearsed, yet I was practicing powerful presence in that meeting, and I could not ignore the nudge from my gut to share that I use this made-up persona to make sure that I can maintain connection even when social anxiety is pulling me under. Powerful presence. And after I shared it, the response that I got from that room told me everything I needed to know that that nudge was right. That's what powerful presence can do for us. It's not just about keeping us connected with others, it's about keeping us connected to ourselves in real time, in front of a room full of people that are counting on us to be powerfully present with them in that moment. And that's it. We activate the connection, often by finding the spark. We reinforce the connection by practicing powerful presence, and we codify the connection by creating a system, simple and sustainable, that allows us to track and remember what matters to the people that matter to us. The ARC framework is simple and it communicates one very powerful thing. I see you, I hear you, and I want you to feel like you belong with us. That is what a nervous system needs. That is what a team member needs in order to engage really powerfully. And that is what a whole team needs in order to not burn out. And it all depends on one leader deciding that it's worth it. Remember my boss from the beginning of this episode? He never took a leadership course on human connection. I can probably guarantee it. He probably didn't even think about that later that night when he went home. He probably only thought about his next data set, but he showed up in the moment I needed him to with full, powerful presence. And he was able to bring me back to myself. Shout out to Professor Embley, wherever you are. If he can do it, friends, I promise, so can you. The ARC framework just makes it more likely that you actually will. And if you want a place to start, I've put together a little download of my 5 favorite connection questions that I actually use at the start of meetings, at the start of one-on-ones. Oftentimes, I'm able to draw out someone's spark. I'm able to watch and see when their eyes light up and note what they're talking about at that moment so that I can begin to reinforce and codify my connection with them. So if you'd like this list for yourself, it's free, it's printable, and you can find it by going to latitudeleaders.com, clicking on resources. Till next time, friends, be good to yourselves. I appreciate you.